Before my rebirth, everyone said my legitimate sister and I had simply gotten into the wrong bridal sedan and married the right men. She married the scholar I had been engaged to. They were sweetly in love. I married her future husband, Pei Yang. We treated each other with respectful reserve. Even my father said that for a concubine's daughter like me to marry so high was nothing to complain about and I should be grateful. But after I was reborn, when I once again watched my legitimate sister smiling as she handed me a cup of tea, I did not hesitate. I knocked her unconscious, put a bridal gown on her, and sent her away in Pei Man's wedding sedan. That same day, I broke off my engagement with that scholar. Everyone said, "Miss, you had suddenly gone mad, preferring armor to rouge and joining the new women's militia set up by the princess." Only the aloof eldest young master of the Pei family reddened with tears. When we met again he tremblingly said, "It should have been you who married in that day." I saw Pei Yang again 3 years later. I returned with a triumphant army, riding a tall horse in full martial attire, hailed as a great hero by the cheering crowds. He, in simple blue robes, pushed through the people to block my path. The soldiers at his side frowned and barked, "Who goes there? How dare you block General Yu's way?" But this perpetually distant Lord Pei had reddened eyes and, staring fixedly at me, called in a trembling voice, "Nian Shu, it should have been you who married in that day." Then I knew he had been reborn too. 3 years ago I was reborn at the very moment my legitimate sister fed me the soft-boned powder to drug me, planning to switch brides. I distinctly remembered that in the previous life she succeeded in drugging me, sent me into Pei Man's wedding sedan, and happily married my scholar fiancé herself. As she left she waved off casually, "You're a concubine's daughter. If you can marry into the great Pei family, consider this my reward for letting me and scholar Xiao be together today. No need to thank me." She thought she had only taken advantage of me, not knowing Pei Yang thus concluded I coveted glory and had wronged my sister. No matter how I explained, he met me with cold eyes. "At this point, you still want to quibble?" He neglected me for 4 years but pitied my sister for living in hardship and helped that scholar rise through official ranks. Even at my death he stood by my sister, reciting the decree meant for her. A maid who went to find him panicked and tearful, tugging at his sleeve to plead, "Sir, Madam is really about to pass. Please go see her." At that time Yu Miaoyan held her visibly pregnant belly and laughed. "Pei Yang and I are as close as brother and sister." "Sister, why are you so petty, so jealous? Trying to twist things between us?" My former fiancé Xiao Shoujian agreed. "She's always been like that, don't you know?" He was already the deputy minister then and seemed to have forgotten we were childhood playmates who once held hands and promised to be together for life. But when did everything begin to change? Probably when Yu Miaoyan fell into the water and her temperament altered. The once haughty, willful legitimate sister suddenly became bright and lively, unafraid of convention, even scoffing at the arranged match with Pei Yang. Parents' orders and matchmakers' words, old feudal nonsense. I won't marry because of that. She insisted she would choose her own husband. As long as she liked him, she would marry him even if he were a penniless beggar. So she did not spurn Xiao Shoujian. Instead she linked her arm through his and coquettishly said, "If I love you, I'll walk through fire and sword with you. Do you dare?" Xiao Shoujian threw caution to the wind and nodded fiercely. "If Miaoyan won't leave me, how could I not dare?" But what so-called fire and sword was there between them? It was only that I stood between them. I bit down and refused to let go, clutching his sleeve as I demanded of Xiao Shoujian, "Our engagement is near, and now you suddenly want to break it off. Xiao Shoujian, have you thought about how a concubine's daughter like me is supposed to survive after this?" He knew that as a concubine's daughter who had lost her mother, I already walked on thin ice at home. If the engagement were publicly broken, my reputation would be ruined and people would scorn me. At his words, guilt and unease flickered in his eyes. "This is my fault, Nian Shu, but love can't be forced. What if I insisted on forcing it?" One moment I was told the engagement was off, the next I watched my legitimate sister cling to my betrothed, and I didn't even have time to cry. I swallowed the heartache, wiped my eyes hard, and fought for myself. "Then I won't agree. Xiao Shoujian, you may not love me, but you must marry me according to the contract." I, Yu Nianshu, will not let my name be dragged through the mud because of the two of you, because that would be the end of me. My father has always been cold. He might send me to a temple to spend my days by a dim lamp, or present me with 3 feet of white silk. None of that is what I want. Why should they be able to follow their hearts together while I end up miserable and shamed? If they won't let me live well, then no one will. I gritted my teeth. If you insist on breaking the engagement and ruining me, don't blame me for spreading the two of you about, then we might as well die together. At that moment, it was as if Xiao Shoujian saw me for the first time. His eyes were full of disappointment and astonishment. After all, in his mind I had always been gentle and kind, never one to argue with others. So he calculated carefully and tried to persuade me to bear it for now, go to a temple to cultivate for a few years, wait until the scandal died down, then find an excuse to take me as a concubine. In his words, Nian Shu, there is still a place for you in my heart. He didn't want to betray Yu Miaoyan, nor did he want to give me up, but why didn't he simply make me his concubine from the start, so that Yu Miaoyan and I could both marry into the Xiao household? It was probably because as soon as he suggested it, Yu Miaoyan sneered and smashed everything in the room to pieces, declaring, "My man's toothbrush doesn't get shared with anyone. Is he just lacking a wife? Fine, I'll give her away." So on the day the Pei and Du families both brought their brides, she slipped bone-softening powder into my teacup, had me placed in the Pei household's bridal sedan, and then strode complacently through the Xiao mansion's gate. Before I lost consciousness, I could still make out her face watching me struggle to open my eyes yet be powerless. There was pity in her look, but it was laced with contempt. To be honest, I really don't understand you ancient women, why you always like competing over men, only thinking about marrying someone, she said. When you see someone has a sweetheart you shamelessly cling to them. As if you're crazy to steal men. But fine, I won't argue with you. Who asked you to be a relic of the times? She stood up, patted my cheek, and waved magnanimously. Isn't it just wanting to get married? You, an illegitimate daughter, being able to marry into the prestigious Pei family. Consider that today's blessing for Xiao Lang and me to be together. No need to thank me. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was her in the wedding gown that originally belonged to me, hopping away. When I opened my eyes again, Pei Yang was lifting my veil, and the delight in his eyes instantly turned to shock. The matter caused a huge uproar. What should have been a doubly joyous marriage ended with the bride in the wrong bridal sedan. By the time I tried to explain and defend myself, everything was beyond remedy. As Pei Yang said, "Miao Yang, as a legitimate daughter, why would she frame you to marry a poor examinee? Nian Shu, this is the thing that benefits you the most, my father. And my legitimate mother nearly punished me with the family law." My stepmother was furious and slapped me twice, shouting, "You little bitch, how could you harm my daughter like this?" Pei Yang stood by watching with a pale face. He still hadn't recovered from the stunned shock of having married the wrong beloved girl. It was Yu Miaoyan who intercepted them when Xiao Shoujian returned for the formal visit. She stuck out her tongue guiltily and said, "Since it's a mistake, just go along with it." She probably didn't do it on purpose. When Pei Yang saw her, he stood up in disarray, and she continued, "Brother Pei Yang, from now on I'll treat you like a brother. We're still one family." Pei Yang was dumbfounded, looking at the one he had longed for, his face as pale as paper. He could only say, "All right." What else could he say? The die was cast. What could be done? The room returned to laughter and cheer because of Yu Miaoyan's few words. Except for me, my face swollen and red, I forced myself into the crowd, completely out of place. In a daze, I saw Pei Yang and Xiao Shoujian both glance at me, as if reluctant and wanting to say something, but they were drawn back by Yu Miaoyan's calls, one helplessly smiling as he served her more food, the other watching her face with infatuated eyes. Yu Miaoyan took it calmly, sitting beside me, her calves swinging gently. "You're so stupid, you couldn't even explain this properly and still got slapped for nothing." She did feel a little guilty after all. I had taken the blame and the beating for her, but soon she shrugged off any remorse and said, "Xiao Lang and I were in love. Husband, I already paid you back. We're even." "No, You married a concubine daughter to the main branch son of the Pei family. You're the one who got the better deal, so I don't owe you anything. Were we really even? Then why, after being Lady Pei for 4 years, had I endured nothing but disdain and ridicule? They all said I was greedy and stole my legitimate sister's betrothal. They said all of this was what I owed her. My husband treated me with neglect yet pitied Yu Miaoyan's impoverishment, helping that scholar rise through officialdom. Toward me he had only helplessness and despondency. Nian Shu, if you hadn't been so foolish then, Miaoyan should have been my wife. Because of you she married into the poor scholar's family. When has she ever suffered like that? I only helped her. Why must you be so petty? Just as when he heard a maid call him back, warning there might be danger to me, and upon hearing the maid's words that Yu Miaoyan and Xiao Shoujian's words were defamatory, he only said lightly, the schemes of the inner household are not something to concern oneself with. He was a gentle man. In the 4 years I was married to him, although he held resentment toward me, convinced I had ruined the marriage, he never treated me cruelly. He simply did not have me in his heart, so no matter how I strove to fulfill the duties of a good wife, he remained composed and distant. No one knew that in the 4 years of our marriage, our first consummation did not occur until 3 years in. At that time his words in court had been fierce. He had offended political enemies and been treacherously shot with a poisoned arrow. I stood in front of him and blocked it. Blood sprayed across his face, his eyes stunned. For the first time he showed such panic toward me. Nian Shu, they all said that Lord Pei was deeply devoted. At that moment, that day, when he held me with an arrow in my chest, he went madly seeking doctors and medicines everywhere, even begging before the princess, and mind you, he was the one most at odds with the princess. The princess kept her favorite men, formed a women's corps, and meddled in court affairs. While he had always been rigid and conservative, rule-abiding and bluntly honest, for him to bow his head and kneel before the princess was simply shocking. Yu Miaoyan was so startled she rushed over and pulled at him. A real man has gold under his knees. Brother Pei, how can you be so spineless as to kneel to a woman? For the first time, Pei Yang didn't listen to her. He just stared at the floor, lost in thought. He remembered me waiting for him to return home each day, smiling and calling him to eat. He remembered my daily parting words urging him to come back safely. He remembered how over the years I'd been filial to elders, managed the household, always gentle and considerate. As he thought, the 3 years we'd missed flooded back into his heart, and he knelt for a whole day and night, finally obtaining a single soul-saving herb. Yu Miaoyan ran off in anger. He used the herb to save me. When I woke, he held my hand and finally said those words, Nian Shu, let's live well together from now on. I should have been happy. At least 3 years weren't wasted. My husband had finally changed his heart, finally turned back to see me, and indeed, for a few months we lived in sweet marital bliss, so good that I thought it would last my whole life. If only 3 months later the servants hadn't brought news of Yu Miaoyan's pregnancy. If only when he heard the news, the hand that was painting my eyebrows hadn't trembled and smudged the line. Pei Yang said that Yu Miaoyan had suffered, and that this suffering was because of me. She was born a legitimate daughter, the wife he had originally chosen, raised in privilege and pampering. She should have had the smooth life, but instead she married a poor examinee and endured hardship, often coming to him to cry and complain. So over the years, Pei Yang had always helped her, backing her up in public, helping her husband rise step by step. After Yu Miaoyan became pregnant, he helped even more, to the utmost, simply to help her obtain a title. During that time, all of Jinling laughed at me, mocked me for reaping what I had sown, for being unable to keep my husband. I tried to reason with him, tried to stop him, but Pei Yang only said, one last time. Nian Shu, just this once. After that I'll settle everything with her and we'll live peacefully. You see, he still treated me the same way. Even my coughing up blood he took for an act, a ploy to stop him. But sadly, it wasn't an act. That single elixir only bought me 3 months of life. And by the 3rd month I was on my last breath. Outside the drums and gongs sounded. My husband held an imperial edict and, in all his glory, presented a decree to another woman. I lay alone, staring at the empty bed curtains, recalling our 4 years together. as if a permanent veil had always separated us. Only when he saw Yu Miaoyan did a little smile appear in his eyes. In his words, "You took my wife, I don't blame you, but Nian Shu, don't be too greedy." I stopped being greedy, so when I was reborn, I returned his wife to him. I still remember that day I opened my eyes. Yu Miaoyan smiled and handed me tea just as she had in the last life, and I almost without hesitation knocked her out and sent her up in the Pei residence bridal sedan. I then turned to find my father and Xiao Shoujian, who had come to escort the bride, and said, "I won't be marrying into this family." They all said I was mad. Father even wanted to have me bound and taken away. After all, he couldn't bear to lose face. My legitimate mother egged him on, saying it would be better to kill me to clear the family honor, but I made a huge scene, almost embracing mutual destruction as I shouted, "If anyone dares force me, I'll expose Yu Miaoyan and Xiao Shoujian." My sister-in-law and brother-in-law's dalliance, reborn into this life. I am now weak and alone, with virtually no options, but I neither want to marry Pei Yang nor Xiao Shoujian. I could only clutch this do-or-die secret and gamble for a slim chance. The household is busy with people coming and going. They couldn't stop me. If I raised my voice, someone would hear. Father and my stepmother instantly panicked. Xiao Shoujian's face went pale. I struggled, repeating like a madwoman the tangled past between Yu Miaoyan and him, recounting the back and forth between sister-in-law and brother-in-law. Someone would hear. If they didn't annul the engagement and let me go, then everyone would lose face together. We might as well all go to ruin. Father and stepmother, furious, swore to beat me to death. They didn't only threaten, it seemed they truly intended to kill me. If I died, there would be no one to testify. If my words spread, they could simply say I'd had a hysterical fit, just babbling nonsense. After all, the Yu family could not afford to lose face, but they miscalculated. I finally waited for someone whose appearance would shake everything. A crisp round of applause came, and a woman's casual voice sounded, "Lord Yu's residence is indeed lively." Everyone present looked up, expressions shifting, then all knelt in unison. "Your Highness the Princess." I was released and collapsed to the ground, feeling like I'd survived an ordeal. Rubbing my head while my palms were cold with sweat, I remembered correctly, in my previous life, when the princess visited for the ceremony and felt unwell, she had rested in a side room near here. My father tried to cover it up and hastily said, "Our daughter behaved improperly and disturbed the princess. We beg the princess's mercy. I will have her taken away to be punished." But my actions were quicker than his words. Kneeling, I crawled forward and faced the princess as if ready to die. "Your Highness, today was supposed to be Nianshu's joyous wedding, yet she unexpectedly learned that her sister has a private relationship with her future husband. Such a violation of propriety, such a disgrace. Nianshu would rather dash her head against the princess's feet and die than ride that bridal sedan. After this, she is fully awakened and will no longer care for marriage. I hear your Highness has recently formed a ladies' corps. Nianshu volunteers to join the army and serve her country." When I said that, the whole hall was aghast. My father was stunned, my stepmother stood dumbfounded, and Xiao Shoujian finally snapped back to himself and reached to pull me. "Nianshu, what nonsense are you spouting? Where is Miaoyan?" I whipped my hand and shoved him hard aside, looking at him word by word with a cold, mocking smile. "Of course she's in Pei's bridal sedan." He staggered back several steps, perhaps from the shock of the news, perhaps from the murderous hatred he saw in my eyes. For a moment he even felt that, if circumstances hadn't forced him, I might have drawn a dagger and plunged it into his chest. But how could that be? I obviously loved him to the bone. In my last life, when he saw me wed to Pei Yang, he once said to me, "I didn't expect Miaoyan to use this method." Don't blame her, Nianshu. Consider this life as me failing you. I will make it up to you in the next. In the next life, I broke off the marriage and stirred up trouble. He panicked for no reason. Nianshu, but I didn't turn back, because the Princess Grand Dowager was already laughing heartily. "Lord Yu, you've raised a fine daughter." My words were certainly shocking and unconventional, but the Princess Grand Dowager has always been unorthodox. The new idea of forming a women's corps had long been the talk of the town. In her eyes, my little act of rebellion was nothing. She was currently worried that no official's daughter would take the lead in joining. Since I offered myself, she naturally wouldn't give my father a chance to back out, so that day, my mad act of cancelling the engagement became the talk of the city. That day, the Princess Grand Dowager happened to come to witness. That day, Xiao Shoujin and I officially ended our betrothal. When the Princess Grand Dowager left, she took an extra maid with her, and among the women's corps about to set out, there was one more little soldier. At the same time, young Master Pei's wish to marry the woman he pined for came true. He looked at the figure under the red veil, his eyes reddening. "You're back, that's good, you're back, this time, we'll live well. I won't blame you, Nian Shu." He lifted the red veil, only to see Yu Miaoyan's terrified face. The bright red veil flapped to the ground, and the joy on his face froze instantly. Wasn't it supposed to be yearning and deep affection? "Now, I'm resetting everything to the starting point, but this time, I won't play along." "But why, Pei Yang, why, when I'm riding a tall horse and you have married the wife you wanted, do you block my way?" Hearing others' words, Yu just looked at me with red eyes and said, "Clearly the one who should have married in that day was you." Pei Yang truly didn't expect to see me again, just as he hadn't expected that in the previous life I really died. Clearly, it was only a little bit, just a little bit more, and he could have cleared things between him and Yu Miaoyan, just as Yu Miaoyan said when she came crying to him after becoming pregnant. "Brother Pei, my husband is a dutiful son. But that mother-in-law always looks down on me and berates me. I must get an official decree to make her bow her head. Please help me one last time." She sobbed with tears on her cheeks. "I know I'm not as lucky as my sister. I couldn't marry a good husband, but clearly, you should have been my husband in the first place." At last, unwillingness and regret appeared in her eyes. Perhaps even she didn't expect that marrying down to Xiao Shoujian would bring not the imagined clinging sweetness, but the daily trivialities of married life. The Xiao family was not the Yu family, nor the Pei family. He was only a failed imperial exam candidate. The household was in shabby condition. If not for that, the stepmother would not have agreed to this match, but she didn't foresee that her own daughter would end up suffering. Accustomed to brocaded clothes and living in a spacious mansion, Yu Miaoyan suddenly fell into the gutter. Not only did she have to use her dowry to help cover household expenses, she also met a shrewd mother-in-law who had been waiting to properly teach her. That old woman thought how glorious it was that her son had married the Yu family's legitimate daughter, and treated Yu Miaoyan with increasing contempt, making her perform daily rituals without fail, or demanding she attend closely and cautiously when serving, all the while subjecting her to scolding, belittling, and mockery. What's so great about an official family's eldest miss? Isn't she just rushing to be my son's wife? If she's my son's wife, she should serve me. This was hard on the pampered Yu Miaoyan. Several times she couldn't help but give up, crying and making a scene as she went to Xiao Shoujian to seek justice. She had thought Xiao Shoujian would protect her, but the man she believed loved her to the bone hesitated when the old woman cried and scolded him for being unfilial, and looked at her guiltily. "Miaoyan, mother after all is an elder, you should yield to her more. Besides, as a daughter-in-law one ought to be filial to one's mother-in-law." The scene was exactly like when he had asked me to yield to Yu Miaoyan back then. At that time Yu Miaoyan was the favored one under protection, and now she had become the one who suffered, so Yu Miaoyan regretted it. She had never realized that the true love she had chased recklessly could be so pitiful, and I, who had taken her place in marriage, had become the triumphant, proud wife of the Minister of Personnel. That position should have been hers, but everything was already irretrievable, and she could only beg Pei Yang. "Peigage, can you really bear to watch me be tormented like this?" Pei Yang lowered his head and, in the end, fell silent. He said to Yu Miaoyan, "This is the last time, consider it me returning Nian Shu to you. After this, we're even." He had already decided that after helping this once, he would spend the rest of his life with me, living peacefully without quarrels. So when I blocked him again by claiming to be gravely ill, he only thought I was unreasonable. Everything he did was for me, yet I was still petty enough to be jealous of my sister. Naturally, we had a big fight. Pei Yang swept his sleeves and left, and I did not try to stop him even on the day he won the imperial decree for Yu Miaoyan. When a maid came running in panic to report my supposed death, he thought it was merely a ploy to vie for favor. Thus, regarding the words about Yu Miaoyan and Xiao Shoujian, he only said lightly, "The schemes of inner house women need not be paid mind." He believed he had long seen through my true colors: selfish, jealous, clumsy in my methods and full of lies, no match for Miaoyan's goodness and brightness. Yet I had one advantage, a crazed devotion to him. After all, when that poisoned arrow struck him, comrades who called him brother avoided him, and Yu Miaoyan, who called him pagage, stayed even farther away. Only the wife he usually looked down on rushed to pull him back. Recklessly, the blood stained his eyes and etched itself into his heart. "My lord, every word I say is true, just go see Lady Yu. Think of it as seeing her one last time," the maid's voice went on, and those around snickered, always with such unbecoming excuses. The women inside the inner quarters just play the jealous card. No surprise if it's Yu Nianshu speaking, a concubine's daughter. She'd even stoop to switching marriages. What face does she have left? She miscalculated. Lord Pei is known for being fair and impartial. How could he abandon her just because she feigned illness? It's not as if he were blind. As they spoke, Pei Yang's eyelids twitched, and at last he folded the imperial edict. He didn't even give Yu Miaoyan a chance, then, to the astonishment of the onlookers, said, "My wife is unwell, I beg your pardon, I will take my leave." Let them think he was blinded. Let them think he had been duped, even if she was selfish, jealous, clumsy in her schemes and full of lies. He had to admit that, in his heart, he truly loved such a woman, so he quickened his pace on the way home, even a little elated. He had already planned it. Upon returning he would feign anger, expose her ruse, watch her panic and cry, then hold her tightly and tell her he had long since let go of his past feelings for Miaoyan, that his heart belonged to her alone. She envied Miaoyan for the imperial edict. He would ask for one for her too. She needn't be jealous of Miaoyan anymore, needn't feign illness to gain his pity, because he would truly care for her, and someone who loved him so would never let him suffer. He entered the Pei residence and looked at the newly hung white silk. A smile touched his lips. He thought to himself that this time his act had been convincing. He stepped over the pond where he had once fed fish together with her, the little fishes in the pond hungry to death. He frowned involuntarily. Even if she misbehaved, she shouldn't vent her temper on the fish. He walked into her courtyard again. There was no one standing there, thinking of him and waiting for him, and no one to rush into his arms to complain, "Why are you only here now?" So he didn't have to say the already prepared lines to coax her, because there were nothing but crying. The maid leading the way rushed in first, and then a wail followed. Madam has passed away." Plop, the patent of nobility he was holding slipped from his hand and fell to the ground, stained with mud. 13 The daughter of the Ministry of Revenue's deputy minister, the wife of the Minister of Rights, Yu Nianshu, she is truly dead. She died on an ordinary afternoon. The morning clouds burned like fire. The setting sun was like blood. Some said she was gentle and kind-hearted, so when she died the servants wept in a flood. Others said she was selfish and jealous, unscrupulous. Otherwise how could a mere concubine be buried with the title of first-rank commandery lady? Yes, she was a first-rank commandery lady. No one expected that the usually aloof and dignified minister would burst into tears and go mad after his wife's death. He clung to the corpse, refusing to let go. Overnight his hair turned white, and he knelt before the palace gate for 3 days and 3 nights before securing a first-rank posthumous decree for his wife and granting her a grand funeral. It should be noted that as another daughter of the Yu family, the legitimate second miss had only managed to obtain a third-rank posthumous decree. The emperor naturally refused, letting him kneel, thinking that once he came to his senses he would return, but that kneeling lasted the full 3 days and 3 nights. It was the princess, coming to discuss affairs with the Son of Heaven. She saw the man whose hair had whitened overnight at the foot of the steps and looked down on him. "The person is already dead. Why do you keep pretending to be so deeply moved, Pei Yang? I thought when you begged for medicine for her back then it was because you wanted her to live." Pei Yang's figure flickered, a dead stillness in his eyes. At her words he looked up, staring fixedly at the woman before him. "I never knew that the medicine could only prolong life for 3 months. The Princess Royal sneered, utterly unafraid. "You are not of my faction and oppose me at every turn. It is already a great favor that I gave you the elixir. Why should I tell you everything? Even if I didn't say a word, didn't your wife ever mention it to you?" She had said it, more than once, but each time he had assumed she was simply jealous, trying to compete with Yu Miaoyan. So he didn't believe her. Pei Yang felt a stabbing pain in his chest, as if he were coughing up blood. The princess's voice floated past his ear. "Yu Jianyenshu is loyal and righteous. I thought highly of her back then, which is why I granted the elixir. If you truly wanted her alive, 3 months would have been enough to find a way to extend her life. But Pei Yang, you didn't. She married you and was attentive in every way, virtuous in all things. Even I, an outsider, could hear a word or two of praise about her from officials' wives who had never liked her. And you were the one at her bedside, whether she was selfish and scheming or gentle and kind. Did you need others to tell you?" With each sentence she spoke, Pei Yang's face grew paler, because each time, he had only believed what others said. For example, just now, as soon as she heard the news, Yu Miaoyan really did come. The Princess Imperial rose and entered the Imperial study, her tone indifferent. "You used the Pei family as chips for me." Naturally, Yu Nianshu could receive a first-rank Imperial edict, but Pei Yang, whether she is truly of poor character by nature, or you've long harbored prejudices against her, you know best yourself. 14 No sooner had the words fallen than Yu Miaoyan finally ran over, exasperated as if at iron that won't be forged into steel. "Brother Pei, how could you kneel for her again?" Pei Yang looked up, hair disheveled, staring fixedly at the woman he had once loved, his voice hoarse. "Nianshu, she's dead." Yu Miaoyan didn't care at all, only intent on pulling him up. Xiao Shoujian was part of the second prince's faction, and now Pei Yang was entangled with the princess. Wouldn't all her schemes to climb up be ruined? So she said impatiently, "Dead is dead, isn't she just a woman? If you want, I'll give you 10, get up first." She didn't see that Pei Yang, who had always looked at her with pity, suddenly turned icy-faced as if seeing her for the first time, his voice trembling. "Only a woman." Yu Miaoyan knew she had misspoken and her face flinched. "Brother Pei, that's not what I meant." But Pei Yang could no longer listen. He suddenly realized he seemed to have made a mistake, a monumental one. He stared at Yu Miaoyan. "She is my wife. Even if you feel no gratitude for the help I've given you over the years, she is still your sister." But she was dead, and Yu Miaoyan just shrugged lightly. "Dead is dead, just a woman after all." "Brother Pei," Yu Miaoyan's panicked cry was left behind as he strode away. The austere, official Pei, once so poised in his career, limped, crushed, and turned to leave. But within 3 hours, the cloud of doubt over that past marriage change and its truth was laid out before him. The snowy white paper was suddenly soaked by a drop of tear. The man murmured hoarsely, "Nianshu, Nianshu." He regretted it. He truly regretted it. 15 The 13th year of Jing'an, first-rank titled Lady Yu Nianshu was given a grand funeral. In that same year, the Xiao family, whose official career had just begun to rise, suddenly fell from grace. Rumors that they had formed a faction with the second prince stirred a great uproar, and the Yu family, by association through marriage, was not spared. The emperor, enraged, ordered executions and confiscations. Blood flowed like a river. Pei Yang, for his earlier support of the Xiao family, was similarly implicated, yet this had been his own urged course of admonition, a near self-destructive move. Before punishment could even be delivered, he died. Before death he became obsessed with the arts of reincarnation and rebirth, murmuring, "If I could do it over, if I could do it over." Do what over? He was reborn on his wedding night. Seeing the wedding robe on his body and the bride before him with a red veil over her face, an absurd possibility flashed through his mind, followed by ecstatic joy. The young master of the Pei family finally married the wife he had longed for. He looked at the figure under the red veil, his eyes reddening. "You're back. That's good. You're back. This time we'll live well. I won't blame you, Nianshu." He lifted the red veil, only to see Yu Miaoyan's terrified face. With a plop, the bright red veil fell to the ground. 16 Time flowed on. "This was the first time I saw Pei Yang since I was reborn. I vaguely remembered that in my previous life at this time he had already risen rapidly in officialdom, enjoying all the spoils of success. Aside from marrying me, the wife he did not love, his life was almost perfectly smooth. But now, looking at this gaunt, desolate man before me, I could only see his disappointment. What did that have to do with me? I heard the commotion and, catching a glimpse of him in his hopeful gaze as one might glance at a roadside flower or grass on the ground, I asked, "Who is this?" In this life he and I had no connection, and I had been stationed at the border for 3 years. The deputy general, without suspicion, replied, reporting to the general, "This is Minister Pei Yang, Lord Pei." "Actually, General, you should know him." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." The talk drew the attention of the gathered townsfolk, who murmured and speculated, "Minister Pei, how could he be here? If he's here, isn't he afraid that that madam will cause a scene? No one knows how many times she's made a scene. How does he still have the nerve to go out? But he does have some connection to General Yu. Which is, he used to hate it when others mentioned his relation to me. In this situation he should have been pleased, but for some reason, upon hearing the conclusion about to be blurted out in public, his face suddenly went pale. "No, don't say it, too late." The Deputy General, frank to a fault, blurted out, "Lord Pei is indeed Miss Yu's husband, your brother-in-law." 17 My husband and my brother-in-law, two insurmountable chasms. This life they lay brutally between Pei Yang and me. His face was as white as paper. I shook my head calmly. "Brother-in-law, no." The words were like a thread of hope. He lifted his eyes urgently and asked, "Nian Shu, could it be that you also?" Before he finished, my voice had already fallen. 3 years ago I severed all ties with the Yu family. There is no longer any connection. I have neither a younger sister nor a brother-in-law. Besides, I've heard Lord Pei is very close with Prince Jing, and everyone knows the Prince and the Princess Imperial are at odds, so, you and Lord Pei cannot be said to be completely unrelated. In his astonished gaze I curled the corner of my mouth slightly. The woman who in the previous life could only follow behind him meekly is, in this life, seated on an iron charger, remarking lightly, "We should be political enemies. And political enemies never rest until one is destroyed." 18 When the words fell, I did not linger. I cracked the whip and ordered coldly, "The Qinglin army has orders to enter the city to pay respects to the sovereign. Bystanders, clear the way at once. Those who block the road will bear the consequences." The iron cavalry were merciless. Horses neighed loudly. Pei Yang snapped back to himself from my words, but he was full of unwillingness. "No, Nianshu, you can't refuse to acknowledge me." He had struggled to be reborn, struggled to get a second chance. He thought everything could return to how it was, but in the end, he happily lifted the red veil and saw no longer the face from his memories. Heaven knows how he suffered these past 3 years, how he tormented himself after learning I had joined the women's battalion and gone to the border. He didn't even know where I was, whether dead or alive. After waiting so hard for news of me, I wouldn't even spare him a glance. He was unwilling, utterly unwilling. Nian Shu, amid the cries, he recklessly threw himself in front of my horse. He still remembered that in the years I was married to him, even the slightest wound on him would make me ache with worry, but now, no one cared. My eyes did not blink, as merciless as the falling hoofbits. "Mercy." I planted a boot straight into his chest and urged my horse to gallop away with a sputter. He seemed to spit blood. Everyone around heard the sound of bone breaking. Sure, after all, it was the force of the war horse. No way a few broken bones could do that. I didn't look back, didn't pause, so of course I didn't see Yu Miaoyan, whom I hadn't seen in 3 years, arriving belatedly. She looked at Pei Yang, lying in a pool of blood, and her eyes instantly filled with tears. "Brother Pei, now you should finally see clearly, right? She's always been cold and heartless. There was never any room in her heart for you. Why did you have to insist on her?" She was utterly aggrieved, and she did have reason to be reborn on her wedding night. She thought she'd finally made the right choice this time, no longer forced to endure the humiliation of the Xiao family from her previous life, and would at last become the minister's wife. But who could have imagined that Pei Yang, who had once loved her from afar, would change his manner, hysterically clutching her by the throat and asking, Where is Nianshu? Where did you hide Nianshu? What Nianshu? It was clearly Yu Nianshu who knocked herself out and was sent in. Evidently Yu Nianshu regretted it too. That was fine, everyone could return to the proper path, no one owing anyone anything. But Pei Yang didn't see it that way. That day he had nearly gone mad as he rushed out of the bridal chamber. The groom, who should have been elated, rode his horse to the Xiao family courtyard, saying only that he wanted to find his wife, and was met with a counter-question. Married? What marriage? Didn't Miss Yu lose her mind, call off the wedding, and join the princess's female guard? Only then did he belatedly realize, time and again stabbed in the heart. I only learned later that that day Pei Yang had gone mad trying to call off the engagement, but Yu Miaoyan, having been given a rare second chance to get everything she wanted, would never give up so easily. Besides, if the engagement were truly broken off, she would become the laughingstock of Jinling. So she gritted her teeth and threatened me. If Pei Yang dared to divorce her, she would throw herself against a wall and die, and then slander it all as an affair between Pei Yang and me. After that my father and my stepmother added pressure, and Pei Yang had no choice but to accept the match, no matter how hard. Yu Miaoyan later tried to mend things. It was to no avail. In the end her obsession turned into madness. Whenever she saw Pei Yang get close to any other woman, she would make a scene. Pei Yang watched coldly, and she became known throughout Jinling as a jealous wife. Many people sighed. What had seemed a perfect match had turned into a pair of embittered lovers. So now that she saw Pei Yang's ribs broken by my cavalry and him collapsing in a pool of blood, how could she not be pleased? She hoped he would give up, that love would turn into hatred, but she looked up and instead saw Pei Yang weeping all over his face. No, what do you mean? No, she just doesn't want me anymore. What do you want me to do with him? In the past I was weak and alone, unable to save him from certain death. Now that I have returned triumphant, he will have no way out. Inside the Princess Senior's residence, my tone was calm and even. I am not a magnanimous person. The events of my past life make it impossible for me to wipe away grievances with a smile. True, it is only natural that Pei Yang does not love me, so it's reasonable for me to reclaim the life I gave to save him, isn't it? Besides, perhaps because of the rebirth, the situation in Jinling City accelerated several times. The emperor was struck down in middle age, the remaining poison hard to purge, now wasting away on his sickbed. Everyone knows his days are numbered. The second prince, Princeton, failed first in the succession struggle and was demoted to commoner with no hope of return. The crown prince acts foolishly and is not a threat. Only the fourth prince, Prince Jing, excels in every respect and was raised by the empress, so he should be the heir. But inconveniently, the Princess Senior, as the emperor's eldest sister, holds high rank and power, and now shares the responsibilities of state with Prince Jing. What she intends is something many think impossible, yet everyone also understands it all too well. It just so happens that I am the Princess Senior's confidant, tasked with killing Prince Jing's favorite retainer. Each serves their own lord, so no one can blame anyone else. Good, very good. On the main seat, the Princess Senior smiled brightly. Yu Qing, you are indeed the one I chose at a glance. For bearing this burden for me, naturally I should give you some welcoming gifts. She waved her hand, and a limp figure was dragged forward and slammed roughly at my feet. The man didn't even have time to lift his head. He clung to my shoe and begged in terror, "Princess, spare me, princess, spare me." Nianshu, Xiao Shoujian at last recognized my face. Childhood sweethearts, comrades through hardship, this was the greatest hope my circle held for Xiao Shoujian in my past life. But clearly he did not think so. The vows he made to me were given, word for word, to Yu Miaoyan. The rumors that put me to death he added to without hesitation. While doing these things he had already donned official robes and, with the backing of the Yu and Pei families, rose step by step. When I confronted him, he sighed. "Nianshu, you know the most important thing for me entering court is my reputation, so out of necessity I could only say such things to distance myself from you. After all, I'm sorry to you, but everything is fate. With Pei Yang by my side, you were only the subject of a few slanders. You wouldn't die, then accept your fate. I don't accept fate, so in the end of the story, I sit upright in the seat of power, while he kneels at my feet like a dead dog. Is it really you? He was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. Great, Nienshu, aren't you working under the princess? Then put in a good word for me. He still didn't know why he had been seized by the princess in this life. Yu Miaoyan had endless regrets and even loathed him and his old mother to the bone. She had frequently oppressed and taken vengeance on them. Naturally, he was still a poor provincial student. It was said his old mother had been tormented to death by Yu Miaoyan. This finally allowed Yu Miaoyan to vent her anger. Because of this, Xiao Shoujian hated her with a hatred that reached into his bones. Otherwise, when he saw me he wouldn't have been so delighted, lamenting his past mistakes and saying, Nian Shu, it was all my fault back then. It was that bitch Yu Miaoyan who seduced me. I never expected her to be so viperous. My mother only said a few words to her and she struck so hard. But I've repented now. Shall we marry? This time, I will treat you well. As he spoke, he instinctively reached to stand and take my hand, murmuring, when the time comes you'll just manage the household, be the head of the family, speak a good word to the princess, and I can rise in rank and support you. Yeah, right. I rose onto my toes and, without hesitation, stamped down on that paw, crushing it. 3 years of marching, I crawled out of piles of the dead and into them again. Even the force that once could only pick up an embroidery needle has been trained into the weight of 1,000 catties. Therefore, his bones went crunch, crack, making a pleasant-sounding shattering noise. Ah, he screamed incessantly. His whole hand had been crushed off. What a pity. He's a scholar. Without his hand, what will he do? My hand. My hand. Are you insane? How dare you injure my hand? Watching his most treasured thing utterly ruined, his eyes bulged with fury, and he could no longer keep up the act. Bitch. He made a comeback with these very hands. I spat out 2 words. In dissatisfaction, noisy. Then I stomped on his other hand as well, crushing it. Ah, his hands had been ruined. The pain had knocked him out a moment ago, only for him to wake up from the pain immediately. The look he gave me finally held fear, because I truly intended to kill him. He was a little frightened, struggling as he said, No, you can't kill me. I am innocent. If you slaughter the innocent, you will be beheaded and displayed too. As he spoke, he looked toward the Grand Princess, seated in the main place, as if grasping at a straw, pleading, Princess, this woman is mad. Spare me. I am willing to offer a good plan. I will ensure the princess's great cause succeeds. He had that confidence, just waiting for the Grand Princess to nod, but there was no ripple in her eyes. She only smiled faintly at me and said, Are you satisfied with the gift I brought for you, Qing? Don't worry. He stained his hands currying favor with Prince Jing. If Yu Qing tears him to pieces, it would be deserved. He's dead either way. It doesn't count for much. A single offhand sentence handed his life entirely over to me. Xiao Shoujian looked at me in disbelief, straining to find any trace of the once tender, meek shadow in the face before him, cold as frost, eyes sharp as a blade. How is that possible? How could that be? How could a concubine-born girl who was still cowering in her boudoir 3 years ago become a trusted confidant under the Princess Royal today? He had no time to think it through, because I yanked his hair roughly, forcing him to tilt his head back, drew a dagger, and, under his terrified gaze, said in an even tone, Relax a little. Pain is normal. 23 That day, the Long Princess's residence echoed with continuous screams and wails, chilling and tragic. The servants fell silent like cold insects, and the common folk went out of their way to avoid the place. Having repaid a favor with another, I had been in Jinling City less than half a month before, becoming the Long Princess's most notorious executioner. In the major embezzlement case she vowed to fully investigate, I led the raids on one household after another. For a time, the insults hurled at me rose and fell without end, unbearable to hear. Assassination attempts I suffered numbered no fewer than dozens each time. I cut off the attacker's head and hung it at the mansion gate. 1, 2, after enough, naturally fewer people came, and for a reputation as savage as mine, my father and my legal mother, on behalf of the Yu family, righteously spread the news that they had severed ties with me 3 years ago. Suddenly, I had acquired several more crimes. Besides aiding tyranny and acting against the proper order, I was branded disloyal and unfilial, a heinous traitor deserving of death. Everyone said a person like that should descend to the 18 layers of hell after death, burned with fire and oil, tongues pulled out and eyes gouged. Good, I stood there taking in the insults. Walked through the U family gate, and ransacked his household 24 the day they searched the U residence. It was unlucky enough to coincide with my stepmother's birthday banquet. A host of officials' wives had come to offer their congratulations. I, Yu Miaoyan, held my stepmother's and father's arms and acted coquettishly, the whole room basking in joy. Most of the guests were aligned with Prince Jing. They stepped forward to congratulate. Congratulations to Lord Yu for having foresight, for ejecting that rebellious woman from the house early. Otherwise who knows what calamity she might have brought upon the Yu family today. Yes, that Yu Nianshu is simply a monster. What respectable young lady would shout for killing and be so murderous toward the loyal and righteous? Isn't she afraid of divine punishment someday? When my father heard others mention me, the smile never left his lips, but his eyes were cold. She's just a rebellious woman. Merely mentioning her is bad luck. Seeing his displeasure, the others immediately changed tack and began praising my stepmother and me. Indeed, on such a happy day we shouldn't speak of unlucky things. It's the wife of the Minister of Revenue who knows how to teach her children and has raised such a proper daughter. The minister's wife is always virtuous. That Yu Nianshu has such a stepmother and doesn't know how fortunate she is, truly ungrateful. My stepmother was elated by the flattery, proud in her heart but feigning modesty on her face. It's that base-born girl who's ignorant and makes us the laughingstock. But Yu Miaoyan was displeased with comparing her to me. She sneered. She only went to the frontier and showed off. What is there to boast about? Who knows how those military honors were earned? I, for one, wouldn't stoop to compare myself with a fraud. Clatter as footsteps approached. The crisp sounds of iron armor colliding grew clearer. A troop in armor suddenly burst in, encircling the happy crowd. Swords were drawn, cold steel flashed against the armor. The leader parted the beaded curtain, his gaze sweeping the room as he spoke in a cold voice. Yu Zhixiao, Minister of Revenue, embezzled the Huainan disaster relief funds, sheltered the Qi Prefecture rebellion, depleted the national coffers, formed cliques and pursued private gains, multiple crimes warranting multiple punishments. The Princess Royal has decreed household confiscated and imprisonment, execution after the autumn interrogations. The Qinglin army carries out orders. Those who resist to the end, no mercy, kill on sight, dead silence, a silence so complete you could hear a pin drop. Everyone stared at me, mouths agape. I looked up and met my father's stunned gaze, and greeted him coolly. Father, I'm here to raid the household. You see, even though I had already severed ties with the Yu family, I still called him father. I do not hold grudges. How dare you? Nonsense. Who gave you the audacity to slander others? Father recovered quickly, charging forward in anger, intending to scold me as he had before, to accuse your elders, to break into an official's residence who taught you manners. Today I'll teach you your place in the family hierarchy. But things were different now. No sooner had he finished speaking than I kicked him out. His frail body, bent over a desk for years, could not withstand that force. With a thud he flew across the room and struck a wooden post, immediately spitting blood uncontrollably. Master, father, my stepmother and Yu Miaoyan cried out in unison and rushed forward, panic-stricken at my father's condition. I withdrew my foot and said coldly, Minister, I told you, those who resist to the end shall be killed without mercy. You are the ringleader, how could you lead an assault? Seize him, Enno. Father coughed blood and struggled. But it was too late. I had already given the order. Raid the household, imprison them. At my command, the ironclad soldiers charged into the residence without hesitation. Instantly, screams erupted. The grand ministerial mansion descended into chaos. The officials and their families who had come to the banquet fell silent with fear, each feeling at risk. Just moments ago, my stepmother's personal maid tried to stop us and was cut down with a single blade. As I had said, those who resist to the end shall be killed without mercy. How could you hurt your father? The legitimate mother trembled with anger, pointing at me as she cursed, "You immoral little girl. Do you really think you're something special? His Royal Highness Prince Jing will surely not spare you when he finds out. By then even the princess consort won't be able to protect you." Her family relation with Prince Jing was close, so she spoke with great confidence. I stepped forward and looked at her arrogant face. Perhaps my calm was unusually abnormal. Next to me, Yu Miaoyan suddenly had a bad premonition, her voice trembling as she asked, "Yunyan Shu, you what? Are you going to do to my mother?" "Do nothing, just help her shut her mouth." Blood gushed out when everyone was caught off guard, a portion of the tongue dropping to the ground. I spoke in a calm tone amid the screams. "His Royal Highness Prince Jing has always been virtuous and renowned. You provoke and bite for no reason. You should have your tongue torn out and shown. Crazy, you crazy person. My mother is a court official." Yu Miaoyan watched with wide eyes as her legitimate mother lost her tongue, writhing in pain, nearly fainting, slumping to the ground and retreating backward. So what if she is a court official? The Yu family has already been raised. Is there no one who dares to stop it? On the contrary, the guests who had just scolded me with words now looked nearly to cry, pleading for me to let them go. These days, the Princess Dowager and Prince Jing were contending, and my sharp blade had stained with so much blood. In the past, they treated me as a ruthless, improper tool, but now, having witnessed my methods with their own eyes, there could be no more sneering contempt in them. We were merely invited to a banquet by invitation, and we know nothing about the Yu family's matters. General Yu, you are magnanimous. Please spare us. Moreover, we are all officials' kin. Could General Yu not have the authority to arbitrarily detain us without orders? Of course not. I didn't care much and let them run out as if they'd survived a catastrophe. Yu Miaoyan was among them. She was scared and finally sensed that the Yu family was facing a great calamity when the pebble I kicked knocked her to the ground. She screamed in terror, You can't kill me, and you can't tie me up either. I am now the minister's wife. I'm no longer of the Yu family. Yu Nianshu, don't you dare repay kindness with betrayal. Brother Pei won't let you off." I smiled at her. For such a grave crime, all implicated will be punished together. As for right and wrong, let's first take a trip to the heavenly prison. Everything will soon be clear. How could I ever repay kindness with betrayal? I'm only handling official business, nothing more. It's just that there are many brutal tortures in the imperial prison. I hope she can endure them. 28 The sky darkened, outside the vice minister's residence. Under the gaze of the crowd, I hauled Yu Miaoyan and dragged her into the cage. The old fossils who've always disliked me burst into curses. A lapdog, she's utterly lawless. Great Chi is upside down now. She'll die a miserable death. Die a miserable death. Will I? It's not like I haven't died before. I once was virtuous and demure, obeying the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Yet I never saw even half a good end. Since whatever I do is wrong, then I might as well do anything. From today on, my ferocious reputation will spread throughout Great Chi. The world was boiling over. Pei Yang didn't come to me until the next day. At that time, I had just come out of the heavenly prison, still carrying a faint scent of blood behind me. Yu Miaoyan was already covered in wounds, her flesh a blurred mess of blood. Seeing him, she burst into tears. "Brother Pei, you've finally come to save me. That wretch almost killed me." But her brother Pei didn't spare her a glance. He only stared at me, as if afraid I might vanish. His voice strained. "Nianshu, 29. I wiped my hands and looked at him with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Perfect timing, Lord Pei. I am merely doing my duty. I questioned your lady, and she is indeed completely innocent. I was just about to send her to you." My tone was polite yet distant, as if separated by an unbridgeable chasm. Yu Miaoyan seethed with hatred. "You're talking nonsense. You're clearly taking private revenge. What interrogation? She just used every torture from the prison on me. Brother Pei, look at these wounds. She did them with her own hands. This is her true face. She's a venomous, viper-hearted woman. Now do you believe me? I truly am innocent." She couldn't stop crying. Pei Yang finally deigned to look at her. "Sure, but isn't this what you own, Yan Shu?" Yu Miaoyan's sobs abruptly stopped, and she looked up in astonishment. Pei Yang continued, "When you first left to marry another, You stood by and watched Nyan Shu bear the blame and be showered with abuse. You deceived me into feuding with her, then coaxed me into fighting for your decree only for my wife to end up carelessly dying on her sickbed. So, isn't this what you owe her? The cycles of fate are laughable indeed. These words, normally, they were the ones he said to me. Yu Miaoyan's eyes were filled with dead stillness as she struggled to ask, even if I was wrong, do you really have to blame me, Brother Pei? Do you truly have no trace of genuine feeling left for me? For these 3 years, she has devoted herself wholeheartedly, again and again trying to win back his heart, but what has she gained? Pei Yang shook his head coolly. Even in my previous life, there was only Nian Shu in my heart. She let go in despair and fell silent for 3 seconds. Then she broke into mad laughter, tears falling and hardening into searing hatred. Hypocrite, Pei Yang, you hypocrite. When you're mean to her, she clings to you like a dog. When you're good to her, you don't cherish it at all. You're nothing but a lowlife. Do you think that treating me like this will make you Nian Shu forgive you? You're wrong. She holds grudges. Today she treats me like this. Tomorrow won't that fate be yours as well? She was dragged away by Pei Yang's men, and the insults gradually faded. Pei Yensai said to me, I already wrote her a divorce letter. Nian Shu, keeping her for 3 years was to keep you safe. Now that you've returned, we should be reconciled, and there's no reason for her to stay any longer. 30. He raised his hand, wanting to touch my face, his eyes reddening. Don't worry, in this life and the next, I will never let anyone hurt you again. I frowned, kicked him away, and met his cold gaze. Lord Pei, surely you've drunk too much and are speaking nonsense. I now have the power I wanted, the influence I wanted. Why do I need anyone's protection? If you dare bring your dirty hands near me again, watch your claws. Pei Yang was kicked to the ground, old wounds piled atop new ones. He spat fresh blood yet showed no anger. Hearing this, he only raised his voice. You really think the eldest princess is promoting you? He forced himself to speak. Nian Shu, don't be stupid. She has never hesitated to use any means, as a woman, Jing Pandao, and now she still presumes to reverse heaven and earth. You are nothing but a knife in her hand. When he saw me stop and look back, a glint of satisfaction flashed in his eyes, and he continued, these past days, you have, with great fanfare, ransacked families and exterminated clans for her. You have no idea how many aristocratic houses you've offended. Do you think that when they truly take action, the Princess Imperial will protect you? After all, I am nothing but a scapegoat. Since ancient times, when the birds are gone, the good bow is put away. When the crafty hare dies, the hunting dog is boiled. What she gave you was only a fleeting moment. I asked him, so you think, what other way do I have to live? He, thinking I had taken his words to heart, hurriedly said, King Jing is merciful. As long as you are willing to submit, hide by the side of Princess Chang, and at that time, together with internal and external aid, we will wipe out the treacherous ministers. After the world settles its balance, he will surely remember your merit. I have pleaded with His Majesty King Jing for mercy. From now on, there will be no more Nian Shu in the world, only the daughter of the official family who returned from the temple to take sick leave for you and me. He will grant us a marriage. Nian Shu, can we go back to how things were before? I laughed. In the past, he nodded hopefully, then his gaze fell on the gruesome scar on the back of my hand. And his expression suddenly froze. Not just the back of my hand, under my clothes. My flesh was crisscrossed with scars, arrow wounds, knife cuts, frostbite, burns. In short, there wasn't a single unscarred patch. How could it be like this? His lips trembled as he whispered again and again, how could it be like this? I said calmly, that's exactly it. Pei Yang, on what basis do you think that after I've been through hell and back, I could return to the way things were with you? Regret filled his eyes. I thought the so-called women's army was just, how could it be? How could it be? I knew what he was thinking. Other court officials thought the same. The so-called women's army was merely the princess acting recklessly and putting on a show. How could a group of women with no strength go to the battlefield? Mostly they would pretend to have glorious battle records, but in truth were nothing but embroidered pillows, unfit for public affairs. Because of that, in the past 3 years, Pei Yang never once worried that I would be in danger of losing my life, But Pei Yang, the battlefield is the battlefield, it makes no distinction between men and women. I stand here today because I have killed countless enemies and survived death time and again. You say the princess used me, but when I was forced into a marriage and slandered, which one of you ever thought to use me? His complexion drained of color. No, each one of them watched coldly. Even Pei Yang, who had been reborn, knew full well that I was forced into a substitution marriage. That after the events of the next day I would be blamed, and yet he didn't care, he was only pleased. In this life I still happen to be the substitute bride, otherwise, if I didn't marry him, what would he have done? Only the Princess Royal was willing to use me, willing to give me a way out, a way to live without being someone else's puppet and plaything. So you say she uses me. I will only thank her for being willing to use me, even if I can only live passionately for a few short years. It's better than drinking the bitter cup and spending a lifetime with you. Pei Yang was choked with emotion, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, and I responded firmly, my voice resolute, I accept it gladly. 31. Pei Yang indeed left with the crazed Yu Miaoyan. I entered the mansion, pushed open the door, and it was pitch black inside. A heavy metallic smell of blood hung in the air. Something barely clinging to life crawled to my feet and begged desperately, spare me, spare my life. I lifted my toes and hooked his chin, looking at Xiao Shoujian, whose ears had been gouged out and whose tendons in his hands and feet had been cut. I agreed very readily, all right, but you'll have to do something for me. 32. The next day, the emperor, who had been unconscious, finally woke up and launched a barrage of impeachments against me. It was clear that my ransacking of the Yu household had become the fuse that set everything off. Understandable, someone who mercilessly struck even their own kin and severed all ties needs no scandal to be found guilty, because she already is one. Prince Jing and his faction had been preparing for a long time, determined to use me to deliver a fatal blow to the Princess Chang. Even if they couldn't, the princess would sever one of her own arms to survive in disgrace, and indeed that was what happened. The emperor saw what I had done for the princess in recent days, flew into a rage, and immediately threw me into the imperial prison. That same night, the princess entered the palace. Nianshu, what do you think she'll do? Pei Yang, dressed in his official robes, sat in the high seat. He was supposed to be here to interrogate me, his eyes full of pity and regret. Now that her power is gone, she ought to go to His Majesty and pin all the blame on you, begging for a way out. If that happened, the emperor would inevitably consider family ties. He might send her to a monastery to cultivate, or place her under house arrest at the princess's residence. As for me, I would become the scapegoat, condemned without a grave. This ending leaves both Prince Jing and Pei Yang dissatisfied because the Princess Royal cannot be allowed to live. Everything has long been clear. Over the years, you've done quite a few wrong things for her. As long as you list them one by one, come, His Majesty won't spare her life, and you can atone for your crimes by making amends. Isn't this good? No, I curl my lips. Crime, what crime have I committed? Seeing that I remained obstinate, he replied, usurping the throne and meddling in state affairs are crimes of treason. I laughed all the more recklessly. He asked me what I was laughing at. I said, Pei Yang, for all your years in office, how could you forget, in the struggle for the realm, if you lose you're branded a treacherous rebel, if you win, it's called. Suddenly, chaos erupted outside the imperial prison, the clamor of iron armor rising one after another. My trusted aide burst in, dragging along the subordinate sent to report to Pei Yang. The subordinate was in a panic, and not good. Pei Yang sensed something was wrong and barked sharply. What's wrong? The subordinate scrambled in, tumbling over himself. Your Majesty, the Emperor has passed away. Before his death, he issued an imperial decree, passing the throne to the eldest princess. Therefore, the winner, called the merit of following the dragon, the meritorious ministers of the hidden residence. 33. Pei Yang miscalculated. In truth, the eldest princess entered the palace overnight not to beg for mercy. She merely went to slay a dragon, and what allowed her, even as one bearing guilt, to still have cause to seek an audience with the emperor, was that detailed letter about Pei Yang's dealings and schemes with Prince Jing and the great aristocratic clans. No emperor can tolerate someone daring to covet the throne while he is still alive, even if that someone is his own son, even if his days are already numbered. So, when he relented and allowed the eldest princess to remonstrate, it was already too late. When it comes to life and work, either don't do it, or do it to the extreme. No one knew what the eldest princess did that night, or what happened in the palace. All they knew was that at daybreak, when everyone woke up again, everything has already been turned upside down. The Son of Heaven has passed away, the throne is passed to the eldest princess, the imperial edict hangs in the hall of light. Armored troops lined up on all sides. Anyone who dared disobey was slain upon the imperial beam, branded a traitor. 34. Pei Yang initially couldn't fathom how he had been defeated. When he heard the news that the Son of Heaven had passed away, he slumped into his chair in a daze and murmured, "How could this be?" It wasn't until I cut off his 10 fingers and dragged him out that he realized. Ran into the equally formidable Yu Miaoyan. She was no longer afraid of me. Beside her sat Xiao Shoujian in a wheelchair with a troop of armored riders, and she tipped up her chin at me. "Yu Nianshu, now that I've achieved great merit with the princess, you're nothing special. I've already requested the princess's favor. Now that the matter is settled, you must hand everything over to me to handle." Pei Yang snapped out of it as if waking from a dream, staring hard at her. "It was you. You're the one who stole those letters, who told you to touch them." He was practically beside himself with rage. Just one final push, and everything would have been a sure success, but he never imagined that in the end it would all be ruined because of that idiot Yu Miaoyan. Yu Miaoyan snorted coldly, her eyes still full of hatred. "Why can't I, Pei Yang, who told you to be so ungrateful, if you won't let me live well? There are plenty of people who will." So when she saw Xiao Shoujian again and heard his promise that he would recommend her to the eldest princess, she almost without hesitation immediately sold Pei Yang out. She always felt it was unfair. When I was the minister's wife, she thought that position should have been hers. When I was General Yu, she couldn't accept why I could and she couldn't. She's just an old fuddy-duddy, why should I be inferior to her? So Pei Yang, if you want to blame someone, blame her, but in the end, you will all die. Pei Yang laughed in anger, amused by her stupidity. "Idiot, as dumb as a pig, you ruined my grand plan for a mere promise. How do you know you're not just a foolish pawn? Why would the Princess Royal cut off her trusted confidant for your sake?" Yu Miaoyan heard the insinuation in his words, and a sense of dread rose in her heart. "What do you mean?" But the Princess Royal had promised her, and Xiao Shoujian had assured her as well, a promise as a guarantee. What can that prove? It's nothing but empty words. Now that you're useless. Even if we do break the deal, what can you do about it? Isn't it just a matter of slitting your throat with a single stroke? I have to say, Pei Yang still saw things clearly. No sooner had he finished speaking, Yu Miaoyan was detained beside her. Xiao Shoujian looked at me like a defeated dog begging for mercy. "Nianshu, no, General Yu, I did as you said, tricked her into producing the letter. Now you can spare my life. Right, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." At the same time, the armored riders accompanying her rode forward and said to me respectfully, "General, Princess, His Majesty has ordered us to escort you into the palace." 35. I put on my armor and said coldly, "Got it." Meeting the longing in Xiao Shoujian's eyes, I sighed a little more. "You and Yu Miaoyan are truly equally foolish. What I promised, is it a fixed vow sealed with a magical seal? On the contrary, I have always been a notorious, treacherous villain who goes back on his word. My promises are but a sheet of paper that's been wasted." I looked at his stupefied face and whispered, "Since they're all going to die, how could you possibly live? Naturally, let's all go to hell together." Behind me, resentful roars and curses echoed without end. I strolled forward at ease, deaf to it all. After all, they're nothing more than defeated foes. 36. As expected, within 3 months, this major treason case has finally come to an end. King Jing's faction was uprooted. Yu Miaoyan refused to accept it and went mad in the imperial prison, muttering over and over that she did not belong to this era and ought to be superior to others. I more or less understood. In other words, she was not the original, legitimate younger sister, but someone who had taken over a corpse to return to life. But this isn't much of a big deal either. After all, The former legitimate younger sister wasn't any better than her, it's just that, being so dutiful, I couldn't possibly keep this news from my legitimate mother. Not only that, I even considerately had them locked up in the same cell in the imperial prison. I imagine that before their execution after autumn, they certainly won't have a peaceful time, unlike my father and Xiao Shoujian, who were locked up with a group of ferocious death row inmates, but after taking a few beatings every day, they would fall asleep as soon as they lay down. As for Pei Yang, I had every set of torture instruments in the dungeon used on him, who told him to be one of the principal offenders. We have to make him say something. The instruments of torture wrench muscles and tear out bones, making life worse than death. At first, he refused to speak. Later, didn't he end up confessing everything in full detail as well? The day he signed it with his mark, he gave a wry smile. Nian Shu, you truly hate me to the bone, but, well, that's fine. Having hate is at least better than having nothing. Looks like he got beaten stupid. Otherwise he wouldn't have slit his own throat in the heavenly prison the day before his execution, declaring that I should live my whole life with boundless hatred for him, never-ending, entangled forever and forever unable to forget him. I looked at the grand mansion His Majesty bestowed upon me and those 10 new favorites. In short, that's how I started living a life without Pei Yang. Days of occupying a luxurious mansion, holding high rank and power, surrounded by countless favorites, yet weighed down by boundless loneliness. So tragic. The end.